My name is Mary. I'm a 29-year-old homemaker. I've been married to Sean for 5 years now. We don't have any kids yet. The way I met Sean was through my dad's introduction. That's because Sean was introduced to my dad. Sean, who works at a company, was originally employed at a firm that was a client of my dad's, and my dad, impressed by Sean's sales skills, poached him to his own company. From there, Sean became a direct subordinate, and through many a happy hour, we gradually got to know each other outside of work, leading to my dad suggesting, "You really should meet my daughter." I was immediately charmed by him at our first meeting. After having a peaceful relationship, we got married 5 years ago. But recently, things between us have been getting a bit rocky. I wonder if this is inevitable for a couple that's been together this long. While thinking such thoughts, the idea of splitting up never crossed my mind, and I just went about my daily life. Then one day, after Sean came home from work, I mustered up the courage to confront the issue. "Hey. We haven't been talking much lately, have we? We don't go out together as a couple as much as we used to. Let's take some time off and go on a trip. Let's go on a trip to a place that holds memories for us. Go to a nice place to eat or something." "Sorry, I just don't have the bandwidth for that." "Really? But come on, maybe this is just how it is with couples who've been together for 5 years, isn't it?" "I'm beat. I'm going to bed." And with that dismissive comment, another day came to an end. Is this really how it's supposed to be? After being together for 5 years? I had thought so, but as time went by, Sean began to look elsewhere due to work stress and personal frustrations, and our relationship grew colder. I was aware of the issue but struggled to find a solution. However, out of the blue, Sean made a surprising suggestion. "Hey. How about we move to a new place?" "What?" I was honestly shocked, but also hopeful that a new environment might improve our relationship. Yeah. I've always wanted to be closer to work. Well, this apartment is too small to have a baby, and the supermarket and school are too far away. Oh, you really thought that much for us? Of course. That's why I've been working so hard. Thank you, then, I get it. Let's start looking for a place right away. Right. Sean's words touched my heart, and knowing he had even considered our future children filled me with joy, lifting my spirits. The next day, we began to live a life filled with newfound freshness. A year passed, and we finally got our dream home, a brand new house. As we started preparing to move, Sean and I found our conversations becoming more lively, almost like when we first started dating. We discussed furniture and appliances for our new home, sharing our interests and thoughts. Sean was passionate about choosing a sofa for the living room, emphasizing both comfort and style. Meanwhile, I was interested in the kitchen, wanting to create a space that was easy to cook in and maintained a sense of cleanliness. Through these exchanges, I felt we deepened our understanding of each other's lifestyles and values, and choosing furniture and appliances became more than just purchasing items. It symbolized a return to the happy times we shared when we first met. But that happiness was short-lived. It was just another day, getting used to our new life after moving. Then one calm evening, Sean and I were relaxing in the living room. "Listen. I've decided to live here with my mistress and our love child." "What?" His sudden announcement left me in shock. "Are you listening? Just give me a week, and then you need to leave. Because I'm gonna live here with my mistress and our child." "Love child? What?" Sean's cruel words froze my heart, leaving me speechless. "Wait, just a minute? What do you mean? I don't understand, explain this to me." Sean met his mistress at his workplace. She was working there part-time. Their relationship had gone beyond mere work colleagues to something more, for the past 2 years. "Hey, I have something to tell you." "What's up?" "I've been thinking, maybe we need a bigger place." "A bigger place? What do you mean?" "Yeah, because, you see, I'm pregnant with your child." So, I thought our current house felt a bit cramped, and I wanted our child to grow up in a more spacious place. Really? Yeah, for real. That's why I want us to move to a bigger house and live a happy life together. I see. Can you give me a moment to think about it? Eventually, they nurtured their love and even had a child. Sean revealed this conversation from 2 years ago to me. Wait, so what happens to us? We're getting a divorce, a divorce. Come on, we're going to the city hall. What? What are you talking about? Wasn't the plan that we'd live here together? We even picked out furniture together. That's ridiculous. I moved here to live with my mistress and our love child. So, please, could you move out as soon as possible? What? You can't be serious. It was never about you. I've realized that. Understand, will you? What's the reason? How did it come to this? Being with you for the rest of my life would be boring. You add nothing to my life and have no value I can be proud of. Being with my mistress seems more fun, and I can't be with you anymore. You're just in the way. You thought that. But, can't you think it over? I've thought it over, and the decision is to prioritize my mistress. She's more reliable, good at her job, and importantly, young and beautiful. Unlike you, she's someone I can show off to others. So, please, understand. I'm not up for a lengthy discussion. This is it. There's nothing more to talk about with you. And lately, with the baby starting to crawl, I'm glad we moved to a bigger house. The new house is perfect for the child to play, and I'm looking forward to our new life with my mistress. So, that's why. You specifically chose a house that would meet the needs of the child. Since we had the child, our family happiness has increased significantly, and I feel more motivated to work harder. You were thinking that. Really, the worst. After weighing whether to spend my life with you or with my mistress and our love child, I've decided it's happier to live in this new house with them. Do you get what I mean? I struggled to comprehend his calm explanation. I desperately tried to organize my thoughts. We were supposed to live happily here together, but he had a mistress and even a child on the side. And now I have to leave within a week. Hey. Are you listening? Can you leave this place? I've already told my mistress she can move in, so it's gonna be a problem if you're not out within a week. I know it's gonna be tough, but please do your best. It's partly your fault for not satisfying me as a woman, you know? Understand that. But man, I was surprised you never caught on about me and my mistress. You should really try harder with the next guy you're with. You were just so boring. Well, I was busy with housework and stuff. That's just an excuse. You being boring put stress on me, affecting my work. A woman needs to satisfy her man or it impacts his job. Success at work depends on happiness at home. Remember that. That's so unfair. I know I'm supposed to make you happy as your wife, but blaming everything on me just because you're bored is not fair. Your boredom is your own issue. No matter how much I try, if you can't find joy in yourself, there's nothing I can do. I'm trying my hardest too, it's so unfair to be told this. Whoa. What? Getting mad at me? Give me a break. This right here is exactly the problem. I'm the one who's been earning the money. The house, the car, everything was bought with my earnings. You've been able to live your life thanks to me. I want you to at least be grateful for that. Are you serious saying that? Their argument escalated. It moved further away from the original point. Fine. I get it. I understand. All right, I'll leave. Good, you're a reasonable woman. That helps. Overwhelmed by despair and betrayal, I managed to leave the scene of this nightmare, feeling like my heart was being crushed. Unable to talk to anyone about it, I spent 2 days and nights thinking it over in a manga cafe. And I determined to get my revenge. Then, suddenly, an idea came to mind. 3 days later. Hey, you're actually leaving? Yes. Lucky me. That's a relief. I'll tell my mistress she can move in tomorrow then. The doorbell rang. Huh? Who is that? The doorbell's ringing. Could you get that, please? What? Get it yourself. Please. Damn. Well, since you're leaving today anyway. Oh well. As he went outside, there stood a luxury foreign car, out of place in the city streets, with an elderly man beside it. Sean, surprised, addressed the old man informally, "Yeah? What do you want?" The old man, surprised yet dignified, approached Sean. "Are you Mary's husband, Sean?" "Yeah, well, that's me, but who are you?" "Here. Take this." "What is this?" "A divorce paper and a resignation letter." "Sign it right now." Sean, both shocked and confused, stammered, "Huh? Wait, who are you? What's this all about?" "A resignation letter, what do you mean? Don't you understand why you need to write a resignation letter?" The old man's voice was stern, fixing Sean with a steely gaze. "What? Old man, what's your deal? Got the wrong house? Or is your age getting to your head?" I quickly ran up to them. "Ah. Grandpa. Thank you for coming today." "What? Grandpa? Hey, Mary. What's this all about?" "Oh, let me introduce him. This is my grandfather, Ken Black." "And why do I need to hand a resignation letter to Mary's grandfather?" "Oh. Didn't I tell you that?" "Wait. Ken Black as in?" "Yes. Getting it now? The chairman of your company." "Indeed. That person was my grandfather, the chairman of the company where my husband worked." Wait, please, you're saying my company's chairman is Mary's grandpa, really?" "That's what I'm saying. But I guess you wouldn't know since we have different last names." "But I was introduced to this company by Mary's dad. Your grandpa has nothing to do with it." "Mary's dad's company is a client of my company. At my husband's company, my grandfather served as the chairman, and my father, the president of a client company, had introduced my husband to the job. Because my maiden name was different from my grandfather's, my husband had been unaware of my grandfather's existence. Only my father, who had introduced him to the company, and I knew about this. Do you understand what you've done to my dearest granddaughter?" "No, it's not like that." "Not like that? I've heard everything from Mary." "Funny. Grandpa. I mean, Mr. Chairman." My husband held the pen over the two documents he had been forcibly handed by my grandfather, his hand trembling. "Once you've finished writing, we're going to part ways." "Wait, Mary, there's more I need to say." "What? I thought you wanted me to leave quickly, didn't you?" I stood beside my husband as he wrote his resignation letter, never meeting his eyes and maintaining a cold demeanor towards him. My husband paused his writing and let out a deep sigh. His heart was filled with conflict, but he was also acutely aware of the depth of his wrongdoings. I had to struggle not to burst out laughing. "Sorry, I couldn't help it. Mary, I'm truly, truly sorry. Please, think it over. I take back what I said before. I don't love my mistress. It's you I love. You feel the same, right? You still love me, don't you? Right? Don't you? Gross. There's no way I could ever love you. It's over. The fact that you even had an affair and then a child on top of that? Unforgivable. There's no way I could ever love someone like that, not in a million years. So, what if I call my mistress right now and break it off with her? Would you stay with me then?" No, you don't have to break up with her. I don't plan on being with you anyway. I can't understand how you thought you could do something this terrible and still be loved. How did you even get to that point in your thinking?" After a moment of silence, my husband's demeanor suddenly changed. "What? If I take the initiative, you'll be the one to take the fall. Don't play with me, woman. Who would like a pompous woman like you? I thought she was cute at first, but as we lived together, she nagged. Her cooking was mediocre, her stories were boring, and you should be thankful that you've lived with someone like me for 5 years. You should get out of this house right now. My mistress is many times better than you. Just a moment ago, he was begging not to break up, and now he's throwing a tantrum because I won't agree to it. He probably thought I'd be scared and back down. But I have my grandfather to protect me, and I'm confident I could take down this guy if I had to. I've trained in martial arts. My grandfather always said, don't let anyone underestimate you because you're a woman. Be strong. He taught me to always be able to protect myself. You're seriously messed up. Your emotions flip too quickly, don't they? It's amazing you even managed to find a mistress. Oh right, you're good at lying. I got fooled by that too. Oh, and I've done some digging. You've been pretending to be single to your mistress, huh? How do you know that? Idiot. Like I said earlier, my grandpa is the chairman of your company. I asked Grandpa to look into Mia. Your mistress. Well done, my granddaughter. You don't back down. Look here, you. When we looked into it, all sorts of things came up. Despite being with Mary, you were getting cozy with Miss Sato? At our company. And there were issues with married women. I was so embarrassed when I found out an employee of my company was doing this. I wondered why I hadn't fired him sooner. It's actually funny. To think I was married to such a husband. I'm ashamed. You're just done as a person. Hearing this, my husband was filled with despair, but my anger was far from subsided. Well, what happens next depends on the mistress's move. Actually, she's going to be here soon. I already called her using your phone when you were in the bathroom. Just then, the doorbell rang again. I excitedly opened the front door. There stood my husband's mistress and their love child. Both stunned to see me. Oh, wrong place. I'm sorry. I stopped the mistress from leaving. Not wrong, not wrong. Nice to meet you. Hello. Is this Sean's house, right? We've been waiting. Come in, come in. Grandpa, can you take care of this kid in the other room? Do you mind if I speak too? Oh really? Okay then. We were married. Mia, the mistress, did you know that? Oh, well, yes. Now that it's out, can't you just speak plainly? I knew. I'm sorry. But, I mean, it's not like it's my fault. Can you stop that annoying way of speaking? Just listening to it is irritating. I'm sorry. You two were in an affair, right? I don't know who seduced whom, but you were both in that relationship. I think you both share the blame. Sorry, who are you? The mistress looked puzzled at my grandfather. Oh, I didn't mention it. Or, you didn't know either. He's the chairman of the company you work for, my grandpa. What? What does that mean? Sean, did you know? How would I know? I just found out too. It's a bit embarrassing not to be recognized, but it gives me a certain shyness. And you two being in an affair before the divorce was something I knew about. We've got evidence. Grandpa, could you show them? Got it. With that, my grandfather pulled out photos from an envelope. Wow, what's this? Pictures of you entering and leaving a hotel, huh? It's clear from these that you're more than just colleagues. It's going to be a problem for a married person to have these exposed, huh? I said to them loudly and sarcastically. What's this? Voyeurism. That's a crime. What a moron. Stop it. There's a child next door. Shut up, Sean. Just be quiet. Hey, you're married and you make a child with another woman. Are you okay with such a despicable man? Let me teach you something, young lady. It's not just because you're attractive, of course, that's part of it, but such women only compete with their looks, their appearance. They're empty inside. Their only asset is their youth, which is quite pitiful. I've seen a few women like that. After all, young women are a dime a dozen in this world. Losing their only asset and ending up with nothing is truly pitiful. I'm sorry, Mia. It must be a hassle, but don't worry. We'll quickly cut ties with these people. And then you can live here with us. Yes. Sorry to interrupt your little moment, but you think you can live here? Sean, what do you mean? Which is it? What are you talking about? Don't you know? You had me sign the contract 5 years ago. Back then, you had no savings, right? It was strange, but now I get it, you were spending all your money on Mia. This place has a good location, it's new, and it has a beautiful view. I signed the contract for this house, so I'm not planning to give it up. Sean? If we can't live here, where will we go? My place is a 1-room and 2 small. I've already told the landlord we're not renewing. What about Sean Jr.? Oh dear, looks like both of you are going to be homeless. That's terrible. I'm not that kind, so please leave within a week. That's a bit of a problem for us. Oh really? Saying that to others? Maybe now you're starting to understand a little bit of how I felt back then. Hey! What about us? What's going to happen? Of course, we'll continue. Continue or not, it doesn't matter, but Mia, are you really okay with this guy? A big liar who's about to lose both his job and place to live. What do you mean lose his job? Hey, don't say any more. Why not? It doesn't matter to me, so I'll say it. It's going to come out eventually anyway. As I said before, the chairman of his company is my grandpa, and my dad introduced him to his current job. So, he's been able to work there thanks to my grandpa and dad. Since he's treated me this way and we're breaking up, I have no obligation to him anymore. I'm thinking of getting him fired. That's why he'll be jobless. And, of course, since you work in the same place, it's possible for you to be fired too. Get it? Both of you will be jobless. Don't drag her into this. She's also at fault. Normally, if you hear someone's in a relationship, you back off. How dreamy can you get? It's ultimately your fault. You need to take responsibility. Please, it's tough to be fired from the company now. There's Sean Jr. and the house and our savings. Please, just wait. Give me another 3 months. It's impossible all of a sudden. At least until we can secure a place to live. It's too late. I can't just leave my granddaughter like this. Go and rely on your own parents. Tell them you've had a child out of wedlock. Hurry up, your baby's crying too. I can't stand to watch. Sean picked up the pen again and began to write on the resignation letter in the solemn atmosphere. You too, right. We don't need employees who degrade the company's morals like this. Sean's hand trembled, and it took him a while to finish writing. Mia also wrote her resignation letter, crying softly. I was tired of being angry and sighed deeply. After finishing, Sean and Mia handed the resignation letters to my grandpa. My grandfather took the resignation letter without saying a word and checked its contents. Under his stern gaze, my husband took responsibility for his actions, accepting the consequences without running away. I watched my grandfather and husband, focusing intently on his figure. And don't forget the divorce papers I asked for. I got it. And, you know about the alimony, right? Oh, it hurts to think I was cheated on and there was even a secret child. What? $60,000? You're really terrible. Well, better than you. I demanded alimony from my husband, and he signed it tearfully. After everything was written, they quickly left the room, carrying little baby John. As they left through the front door, heads down, I couldn't help but laugh again. Grandpa, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming all this way, even though you're busy. It's nothing. Leave it to me. This is exactly when you need a grandpa. But your son brought home quite the trouble. I guess I have to punish him too. Yeah. Dad needs to be punished too. I'll tell Mom. Next time, I'll find a husband candidate for marry myself. That sounds good. I trust you to find someone reliable. And so, the matter was resolved. My ex-husband had once hoped for a new life with his mistress. However, the alimony payments strained his finances, and his relationship with his mistress deteriorated. He turned to his parents, but as expected, they couldn't offer him the support he needed, and he was left to wander. His relationship with his secret son, John, also troubled him. He faced the difficulty of taking responsibility and building a relationship with his child, feeling the weight of his role as a father alongside his affair. My ex-husband was tormented by regret for his actions. His affair destroyed our marriage and betrayed me, deeply regretting his foolishness. On the other hand, thanks to my grandfather, I started on a new path. The alimony became a step toward a new life, and I succeeded in pursuing my happiness. Despite the pain caused by my husband's unfaithful actions, it became a valuable experience that made me stronger and more grown. I cherished the support from those around me and new encounters. With the support of friends and family, I built a new community to pursue my happiness. Over time, I have recovered from the wounds of the past and have become a stronger, more mature person. After being struck by a car and suddenly forced into a life in a wheelchair, what my husband handed me was a completed divorce form. It's your own fault you're in that wheelchair. I don't want to deal with caregiving. Let's get a divorce. I'm not gonna clean up your mess, he said coldly, plunging my world into darkness. After 40 years of supporting him, I couldn't accept this treatment. A flame of anger ignited within me. My name is Evelyn. I had just turned 60. I've been married to Liam, who is 3 years older than me, for 40 years. We met during our community college days. Back then, I looked forward to having coffee at the small cafe where he worked. The cafe was run by his parents, and he, leveraging his appearance, worked there as a waiter. He listened empathetically to my complaints, which he probably found uninteresting, and I was drawn to how he could chat so friendly with every customer. After spending a year making my approach, it paid off, and we started dating. When I graduated from community college, we decided to get married. Though some friends said it was too soon, I wanted to give my elderly grandmother, who raised me in the absence of my parents, some peace of mind, so we went ahead and got married. As expected, my grandmother seemed reassured by our wedding but passed away before she could hold a great-grandchild, leaving my uncle in a distant city as my only blood relative. However, I wasn't lonely. Because my in-laws treated me just like their own daughter. Living with them in their home, just a 10-minute walk from the cafe, was not suffocating at all but truly comfortable, and I fully experienced the joy of family life. My in-laws taught me the cafe business, both strictly and kindly, and about a year after we got married, our adorable daughter Sophia was born, bringing me to the height of happiness. Shortly thereafter, my in-laws decided to retire. They probably wanted to hand over the cafe during the good times. It seems they decided to move to a second home they had bought at some point, and though I felt a bit lonely, I sent them off with a smile since it was their decision. Soon, the cafe officially became my husband Liam's responsibility, and I joined him in running it. Fortunately, I had been thoroughly trained by my in-laws in everything from the menu recipes to bookkeeping right after getting married, and Liam had likewise learned by their side, so the cafe continued to do well with our regular customers sticking by us. However, as the national economy improved and my in-laws were no longer around to keep an eye on things, Liam started to slack off at work. I'm gonna head out for a bit. Hey, it's almost lunchtime. Can't you see I'm swamped here? I'd respond, showing him our daughter sleeping in the baby carrier as he hurried to leave the cafe. Liam had insisted we not leave our daughter until she was over 3, so I worked at the cafe with our young daughter strapped to my back. If you're not here and she gets upset or needs a diaper change, and I have to step away, then there will be no one to look after the customers. It's a problem. It's fine. It's mostly regulars who come anyway. Besides, making them wait a bit or cutting corners won't hurt our prices. No. I was at a loss for words at his carelessness, which seemed out of place for someone in the food service industry, but what he said wasn't entirely wrong. At that time, we were experiencing a rare economic boom, and our cafe, like others, had plenty of customers who spent generously. Our menu items ranged from $20. A minor slip-up here and there, and our regulars, who make up the bulk of our clientele, would forgive us. Newcomers would probably let it slide at these prices too, my husband thought. The leniency was such that there were customers who would tip me, seeing how hard I was working while juggling child-rearing. Unlike today, the online information wasn't widespread, so word of mouth, for better or worse, didn't spread so easily. In fact, there were plenty of cafes offering lower quality than ours that still managed to stay afloat. However, I truly wanted our customers to leave feeling that was delicious, and I felt so relaxed, and I didn't want to tarnish the reputation of the cafe handed down by my in-laws. Customers, tables, meals, coffee, and even my daughter. I was managing everything attentively, working through my tasks. The small size of the cafe, with no real peak times, meant I could run it on my own, and thanks to the economy, we were making a decent profit. But that was the issue. Honey, we have an order. 2 new customers ordered sandwiches with coffee. I'm busy right now. You take care of it. That horse I bet on hit big. I was dumbfounded as my husband casually dismissed me and continued his conversation with a regular across the counter. Originally, my husband was in charge of the kitchen and I took care of the front of the house, but as he thought I could manage, he increasingly began to slack off. After finishing the prep work and opening preparations, he would chat with regulars or read the racing paper, merely observing me work as if it were someone else's business. If I complained, he'd retort with a nonchalant face, "You're managing fine on your own, I don't need to bother." Sometimes, he'd even leave the cafe during business hours to hang out, following an invitation from regulars. Around that time, with the passing of my in-laws one after another and the inheritance that came our way, it probably further fueled his tendency to laze around. But it wasn't just slacking off at work. Believing that household chores and child-rearing were women's duties, it was normal for him not to lift a finger even if our daughter cried, saying things like, "Change her diaper," or "Isn't it time for her baby food? Feed her." As a result, in his stead, I ended up leading a dizzyingly busy life, managing the cafe, household chores, and child-rearing all on my own. When our daughter reached elementary school, customers stopped spending money as freely. Prodded by our regulars, my husband finally started working again, but there was much to be desired in his work ethic after years of laziness. However, I couldn't just bluntly point it out. When I began to speak up, he, losing his motivation, used the cafe as leverage in our negotiations. Considering my in-laws' feelings, I had no choice but to give in. I swallowed the complaints I had about my husband, which were at the tip of my tongue, and decided to quietly support him to ensure the cafe's stability and sufficient revenue. As usual, he didn't help with housework or child-rearing, and his laziness hadn't gone away, but I told myself that supporting him was my role as a wife and worked desperately. Now, 40 years into our marriage, the cafe has survived numerous recessions and is still going strong. Our daughter, who helped out as the face of the cafe, has married a wonderful man, moved out, and is now the proud mother of a boy. Conversations with my husband have become less frequent, and we each have more time to ourselves, but that's not unusual for couples our age. I even think we get along better than other mature couples since we share meals and a bed. Despite the ups and downs, I take pride in how we've run the cafe and raised our daughter together. The only thing left was the matter of a successor. One day, when it started raining in the evening. What should we do? I didn't expect it to rain, and I don't have an umbrella. Do you have one? No, I don't have one either. Even though it's close, getting drenched at this time of year could lead to a cold. I don't want to risk that at my age. As I sighed, my husband tossed me the keys to the bicycle that was parked at the cafe. Get home before it gets worse. You can make it back before the rain gets too heavy on the bike. I'm going out to drink with the usual guys anyway, I'll lock up. With that, he urged me to go home. Taking his word for it, I left the cafe first to start preparing dinner. About an hour later, as I was about to take a break, I realized I had left my smartphone at the cafe. My husband had said he was going out with friends for drinks, and being without my smartphone for even a night was troubling, as it was my means of contact in case of an emergency. Rushing back to the cafe to retrieve it, I was startled to see two figures moving in the darkness of the closed cafe. Thieves, perhaps? As I debated calling the police, my hand accidentally turned on the light. The sight before me nearly made my knees buckle. There stood my husband, with an unfamiliar woman embraced in his arms. "Why are you here?" Overcome by his flustered demeanor and the unmistakable atmosphere, I fled the scene. Panicked by my husband's act of betrayal, I didn't notice the flashing signal in front of me. In the next moment, car headlights blinded me, and I felt a sharp pain as I was struck, spinning around before losing consciousness. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, with my disheveled daughter looking over me worriedly. "Thank goodness. Please come. My mother has woken up." Piecing together the doctor and my daughter's story, it seems I had been hit by a car and had not woken up for 3 days. I hadn't had any ID on me, but fortunately, a regular customer who witnessed the accident was able to contact my husband. My daughter, having received the call from my husband, explained the situation to her son and husband and came to me that very day. A few days after regaining consciousness, with my family gathered in the doctor's office, I was confronted with a reality too hard to accept. I had suffered spinal cord damage due to the accident. I would never walk again, nor could I go to the bathroom on my own. I would need constant care and a wheelchair for mobility. The doctor's words left me speechless, and my husband and daughter seemed unable to hide their shock. However, I was not so weak as to despair over this. My daughter visited me every day, providing support both emotionally and physically. Thanks to her, I endured the treatments and started to adapt to life in a wheelchair. As I began to find mental space, I remembered the dreadful memories of the accident. Who was that woman? What was she doing in the dark? My daughter had brought my smartphone, which she had found and brought to me, but attempts to contact that woman went unanswered. As I pondered how to confront her the next time we met, my phone rang. It was a message from my husband. He said he wanted to talk. Was it an apology or an excuse? Deciding it was time to settle things, we agreed to have a discussion. The next day, my husband visited my hospital room. Since being informed about the wheelchair, he hadn't shown his face even once. The first words he uttered upon entering were not of concern or care but, "A private room, huh? Pretty luxurious." I suppressed my irritation at his insensitivity and quietly said, "I took advantage of the offender's offer. In addition to compensation for damages, they're covering all medical expenses and more." "Oh, played your cards right, huh? Then you must have gotten a hefty sum." "What's with that tone? Don't talk about me as if I'm some sort of scam artist." I raised my voice involuntarily at his lack of sensitivity, and he responded with a smirk. "Don't get so mad. It's true a lot of money came in, right? Makes it easier to bring up what I've been wanting to say." "What?" I was speechless as he took out a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Sorry to spring this on you, but I want a divorce." It was a divorce paper. "What? Excuse me?" I did a double take. His actions were beyond anything I had anticipated, and I couldn't keep up. "Isn't it clear? I told you I had something to discuss." "Are you serious?" "Yes. I've been fed up for a long time. I can manage the cafe just fine on my own, but you always had to butt in and nag, which was unbearable." "But that cafe was passed down from your parents to me. It's important to me." "That's where you're wrong. That cafe is mine. Even when I wanted to sell it because I was fed up with your nagging, you begged me on your knees not to sell. Well, at that time jobs were hard to come by. We didn't have any qualifications. If we gave up the job, it would have been a burden on our daughter, that much was clear. I've thought it was strange since then. The cafe was handed down to me, yet because of having a family, I couldn't even exercise my rights freely. His shouting made me flinch. Blaming the family? I was dumbfounded by my husband, who treated us as if we were nuisances after all these years of supporting each other. He continued to vent as if releasing everything he had held back. Even at home, you'd frown and fuss over the accounts. And using being busy as an excuse, even the housework was half-hearted, wasn't it? We were both working, and someone had to handle the accounts. It's not just that. It's ridiculous to have to check in with each other about everything, even when not doing anything, as if we were children. As my husband listed his complaints, the trust one had built up for him over the years crumbled, and anger welled up inside me. Was he planning to gloss over his own betrayal? After what he did, I couldn't let him have the last word. Staying in touch is common sense when you live together. Besides, you say you were just out playing, but was that really the case? I pressed on as he struggled to find words. That night, you were embracing a woman in the dark cafe. If I hadn't seen that, I wouldn't have had the accident. Are you planning to be with that woman after we divorce? I glared and questioned him. Far from being taken aback, my husband responded without a hint of guilt. Are you blaming me? I don't know what you're misunderstanding, but my relationship with her is not like that. Do you have any proof anyway? There was no proof. Knowing this, he smirked triumphantly, and I bit my lip. That ugly smirk erased the last bit of affection I had for him. That's terrible. Even after what happened to me, you feel nothing. Your ending up in a wheelchair is your own fault due to your carelessness. I don't want to deal with caregiving. Let's get a divorce. I have no intention of cleaning up after you. Dad. There are things you shouldn't say. We both turned towards the door at the same time. There stood my daughter, trembling with anger. How long have you been there? It seemed like a serious moment between you two, and I thought I shouldn't interfere in a marital issue, but I can't stand it anymore. I've heard everything. Mom ended up like this because of Dad's affair, didn't she? My daughter's furious outburst was met with a dismissive snort from my husband. If you're so concerned, then you can look after her. I have no desire to spend my life caring for someone. I'm out. You're the worst. Say whatever you want. You're not a child anymore. You somewhat understand the dynamics between men and women, right? My daughter bit her lip. Her eyes filled with anger. Thanks to my daughter's anger, I felt myself cooling down. As I stared at the divorce papers, I asked my husband, "What was everything I've done up to now? I thought I had been doing my best to support you, but are you ready to discard me now that I'm no longer useful?" It's that sanctimonious attitude that's infuriating. Your hospitalization reminded me of the freedom I once had. After tasting that life, there's no way I can go back to how things were. This is a good opportunity. Let's both be free. Fed up with my husband's statement about my accident being a good opportunity, I decided to agree to the divorce. I didn't want to be with this man any longer, but I wanted to take what I could get. When I brought up the division of assets, he visibly became irritated, but we agreed that I would receive all the compensation from the accident, and in exchange for not touching the house, cafe, or any household items, I would receive 60% of our savings. Let's just get this over with. I'll withdraw your share now, so sign the divorce papers in the meantime. After saying that unilaterally, my husband hurried out of the hospital room. In the quiet of the now silent room, I said to my daughter, "I'm sorry you had to hear all that unpleasantness. Don't worry about it. I'm on your side, Mom. But are you sure? With such terms? It's fine. I hate to ask you suddenly, but could you go to my parents' house and pack up my personal belongings? Do you know where everything is? Of course. I've been helping with cleaning and organizing every time I go back home. I also know where the valuables are kept, just in case. Leave it to me. After seeing my daughter off as she left the room, I faced the divorce papers. I wasn't going to let things end on his terms. Though I was determined. I suddenly realized the harsh reality that awaited my husband. Then, in front of him, I signed the divorce papers. He smirked with satisfaction and quickly snatched the paper. Okay. Now we're strangers to each other. Seeing my husband genuinely pleased, I quietly told him. Sorry to rain on your parade, but you're probably going to regret this. No way. If anyone's going to regret it, it's you. No one wants to deal with a wheelchair-bound old lady. Without being able to do anything, you might even end up senile. But don't contact me. We're strangers now. Take care of yourself. After he left triumphantly, I received a message from my daughter that she had finished packing. Decluttering as part of my life's downsizing had paid off, and she finished in a short time. She even sent photos of the contents for confirmation. The box with the valuables was properly included. With this, I didn't need anything else. As I sent a thank you message to my daughter, a friend who is also a regular at the cafe sent a message saying she was coming to visit. Perfect timing. Let's add some flowers to the thorny path he has chosen. The visitor, known in the neighborhood for loving gossip, chattered away even though I hadn't asked. According to her, my husband had been bragging about a winning horse race bet. Apparently, right after our divorce was finalized, he was seen in a town with a woman. Judging by the description, it was likely the same woman I had seen that night. To hear he hasn't opened the cafe since my accident was astounding. I was shocked when I ran into your daughter and heard what had happened. What in the world went wrong? As she looked at me with a mix of curiosity and concern, I tearfully explained the circumstances leading to the divorce. By the end of my story, her eyes were filled with both sympathy and anger. She squeezed my hand, left me with words of strong support, and left the room. Once she was completely out of sight, I gently lifted the pillow and smirked to myself. It was a good thing I had a chance to use the eye drops. Now, what will happen next? About a month after the accident, I was discharged from the hospital. A few months later, having gotten quite used to life in a wheelchair, I went out to a large shopping mall. It was a weekday, so the food court was empty. As I settled into a seat, someone called out to me. Hey, Evelyn? I turned around to find my ex-husband, who had aged significantly in just a few months. His hair was peppered with white, and he wore a wrinkled shirt and chinos, looking every bit the part of a disheveled old man. He could barely manage day-to-day life with that appearance. In contrast, I had gotten a short haircut soon after being discharged from the hospital, making myself look neat, and I even put on makeup today. I might say this myself, but I probably look younger than my actual age. You've really changed your vibe. When I was married to you, I hardly had any time for myself between housework and the job. I retorted, to which my ex-husband responded with a forced smile. So, you must be bored out of your mind now, huh? Before you go senile, how about helping out with some work? I knew it. What? The cafe isn't doing well, is it? My words made his fake smile freeze. It seemed I had hit the nail on the head. I knew it. After all, I was the one actually running the kitchen, the front of house, and the finesse. My husband, who had spent his time playing instead of working, had seen a significant drop in his skills once he returned. He couldn't remember the cooking steps, the prioritization of tasks was all over the place. And even operating the cash register became a chore. That's why I ended up working ahead of him under the guise of support. Cooking, serving, preparing snacks, mixing seasonings, cleaning dishes, ordering pastries, tea leaves, coffee beans, managing inventory, and even handling tax filings. I took care of all that. It's no surprise things wouldn't go smoothly without me. Did you enjoy your trip? Why not ask her for help? That woman? I don't know her anymore. When I asked her to help out with the shop, she ran away. He half angrily said, but his partner was a nightlife worker. Only my ex-husband had been serious. It was just a service for a well-tipped customer to her. Ironically, it was just a fling, as he himself had once admitted. He continued bitterly. For some reason, the regular ladies stopped coming. They used to sit in my cafe for ages, and now I don't understand why they've stopped. Of course. You've turned the regulars against you. What? He seemed to dislike the chatty ladies for staying too long, but those women who stayed and spent money were our cafe's valued customers. It seems my friend who visited had spread the word about my ex-husband's betrayal. They were also my friends. You think they'd keep coming as usual after their friend was wronged by her husband and ended up in an accident? A cafe run by a husband who cheated and dumped his wife is bound to be shunned. That he couldn't understand this was astounding. I sighed in frustration. We're short-staffed and have been running at a loss. At this rate, the cafe will go under. Well, I'm a stranger now. It has nothing to do with me. As I was about to leave, my ex-husband grabbed my wheelchair. Wait a minute. You must have done something. Otherwise, everything wouldn't have started going downhill all of a sudden. Caught off guard by his desperate attempt to stop me, it was then that my daughter intervened. Dad? What are you doing? Turning towards the voice, I saw my daughter, looking puzzled. Sophia! My ex-husband quickly let go of the wheelchair. Trying to close the distance with a forced smile, he started speaking as if nothing had happened. I hate to spring this on you, but could you consider moving in with me? What? We're short-staffed at the cafe, and I can't keep up with the housework either. If you, Evelyn, the former star of our cafe, could fill the gap you left, it would solve a lot of problems. If you agree, I'd let your whole family live in our family home. There's plenty of room, no need to worry. You wouldn't have to pay rent, and eventually, I'd even hand over the cafe to you guys. How about it? It's a good deal, right? Dad. My daughter smiled before firmly declining. You've got to be kidding. What? You pushed all your work, house chores, and even your care onto Mom, and did nothing yourself. Now you're trying to play the father card and dump your responsibilities on me? That's too selfish. My ex-husband was speechless at her harsh words. Without skipping a beat, she continued. Forgot your own actions while Mom was hospitalized? After doing such things, you have the nerve to ask this. Think I'd live with a man who recklessly abandoned his wife of 40 years who supported him desperately? Honestly, I'd rather sever this father-daughter relationship than accept any amount of money from you. My ex-husband looked utterly shocked, not expecting such a vehement refusal. Back then, I was out of my mind. Well, realizing that is a slight improvement. But living together is out of the question. Why not? Because we're already living with Mom. What? Yes, after I was discharged from the hospital, my daughter took me to her home. Her whole family had suggested we live together, and I gratefully accepted their offer. So, even more reason to stay with me. You won't need to bother with caregiving. Sorry to disappoint. We're not enduring our living situation, we chose it. Huh? What can she do? She's just a burden. Forgot what the doctor said? My lower body might be impaired, but my upper body is fine. Since moving in, I've taken over cooking duties. Oh! It seemed my ex finally remembered. Caregiving isn't as demanding as you think. It's mostly helping me in and out of the bathroom or car. Plus, with both parents working and only managing to feed our son, having Mom cook 3 meals a day, complete with delicious coffee, has kept our family healthy. After 40 years in the food industry, her cooking is unbeatable. Her cafe snacks were always a hit, remember? Seeing my daughter's radiant smile, my ex-husband remained frozen in shock. I exchanged a glance with my daughter and began to leave. Suddenly, my ex-husband started crying out. I was wrong. Without you, I realized how crucial our daily life and the cafe were. Please, remarry me. I sighed deeply. My mind was made up. Absolutely not. I firmly decline. As I said this, wait. Please wait. My ex reached out desperately. Quickly, my daughter maneuvered the wheelchair away from him. Shortly after, security arrived, prompted by someone, and my ex-husband was escorted away as he began to cause a scene for being refused. Wanting to avoid further entanglement, we left the mall to dine elsewhere. After the confrontation, I felt surprisingly at peace. 6 months later, I learned through friends that the cafe had closed. My ex-husband had sold the house and tried to multiply that money through horse racing, but suffered great losses. Now, he lives in an older public housing, scraping by on his pension. As for me, I use my free time to run a cooking class, charging only for ingredients. The only cost required is for the ingredients. Any kitchen-equipped place works. The most involvement I have is with elementary schools, where I engage in activities that also serve as community exchange events. Some schools have even started cooking clubs with me as a guest instructor due to the current retro cafe boom. The classic cafe menus from yesteryears are incredibly popular. Despite the unexpected accident that cost me the use of my legs, it has led me to an unimaginably happy retirement. It feels like I'm reclaiming 40 years of myself, and I'm looking forward to living the rest of my life exactly as I please. Has the transfer not happened yet? Fulfill your motherly duties. What? I'm not your mom though? Huh? At my declaration of not being her mother, Mary hesitated for a moment. Her face, selfishly demanding money, had begun to resemble that of my mother-in-law and Kevin's. It's because of your affair that our family fell apart, so take responsibility. Hearing Mary spout lies as if they were truths, it seems she hasn't yet been told the actual story. No matter how much she's been influenced by my mother-in-law and Kevin, Mary's personality has become severely distorted. Mary might be a pitiful child, but she's at an age where she can be confronted with the truth. Given what I've been through, this would be a minor thing. I held back Henry, who was trying to support me, and faced Mary directly. I'm Jennifer Smith. 48 years old. Next time, there's a deep-sea fish exhibit at the aquarium. How about we go together over the weekend? Really? Let's definitely go. I'll book the tickets. Now, I live happily with my beloved husband, Henry, but I'm actually remarried. My previous marriage was truly like going through hell. I still occasionally have nightmares about my ex-husband Kevin, my former mother-in-law, and my daughter Mary. In my life with Kevin, my previous spouse, I lived with my mother-in-law while raising our daughter, Mary. However, my mother-in-law and I just didn't get along. Kevin and I got along because we were alumni of the same university, but it seems that didn't sit well with my mother-in-law. A woman like you getting an education means nothing. A cunning daughter-in-law like you is not suitable for my son. Every time we met, it was just a stream of snide comments. Moreover, she would always find an excuse to call me over to do chores or go shopping. Kevin initially stood up for me. Mom is from an older generation, so she's a bit set in her ways. Sorry about that. He would apologize and take me out to make up for it, but it seems he grew tired of it. His efforts to protect me from mother-in-law's bullying became lackluster. Hey, can't you do something about your mom? She asked me to come clean again, but I'm working too, so I don't have time. It can't be helped, right? That's just how she is. Besides, she doesn't mean any harm, so you should manage it wiser. His indifferent attitude became more apparent. I thought about separating from mother-in-law, but both Kevin and I were working. And finding childcare was tough. My mother-in-law was happy to take care of Mary, so ending the living arrangement wasn't realistic. However, in hindsight, letting Mary spend so much time with my mother-in-law turned out to be a mistake. By the time Mary was old enough to understand, my mother-in-law's values had been deeply instilled in her. Mary was affectionate towards me until she was about 2 years old. Probably because Kevin and mother-in-law didn't want to deal with the terrible 2-year-old kid, where she would cry and scream about anything. Watching a fussy Mary fall asleep would make the exhaustion from work and the mental strain from dealing with my mother-in-law disappear. I guess I did love kids after all. However, as Mary turned 3, started speaking more, and began attending preschool, she gradually became more selfish. Yet, my mother-in-law and Kevin, who spoiled Mary, never scolded her. Discipline, which naturally means scolding my child when she does something wrong, has become my area of expertise. For instance, when we went to the supermarket, Mary often ran around the store. "Mary! I told you not to run around in the supermarket." It could be a nuisance to the store if she bumped into products, and she could get hurt herself. That was why I cautioned her. However, Kevin and my mother-in-law would immediately interject. There's no need to get so worked up and scold her. It's natural for children to run around lively. It's the stores that have a problem if they find children to be a nuisance. That's right. Look at Mary go. She's going to grow up healthy, isn't she? With them defending Mary like this, whenever I scolded her, she would run to them. If you don't scold her properly when she does something wrong, it's not good for her. Don't get so hysterical. She's just a child. Besides, if you were a proper mom, maybe Mary would behave better, don't you think? Talking to Kevin about how to raise Mary always ended with it somehow being my fault. Mary also liked sweets, and beyond the amount of sweets I had originally decided on, my mother-in-law and Kevin were secretly giving her more. It got to the point where she failed her health examinations. Even then, my scolding fell on deaf ears. "Mary, your mom wouldn't let you have honey when you were a baby. Little kids love sweet things, and she took that away from you. What a mean mom, huh?" "Yeah. I hate mommy for saying I can't have sweets." Botulinum toxin? That's not a big deal, right? Don't be so uptight about a little candy. You can just adjust with cooking. They were not only ignorant about allergies but also seemed not to appreciate the efforts I had made to protect Mary all this time. And they always sought Mary's agreement, so she never reflected on her actions. Instead, as Mary grew to dislike me more with each passing day, my mother-in-law doting only reinforced her bad behavior, making her mean streak all the more apparent. "My candy is gone." "Oh. There it is," Mary would say, pointing to my share of the sweets after she had finished hers. When I scolded her for this, thinking it would affect Mary's character in the future, she screamed and cried, "It's not my fault." My husband and mother-in-law, feeling sorry for her, comforted her by giving her sweets and starting to play fun games with her. This had become a loop. Eventually, Mary grew into a grade schooler and, it seemed, was able to excel in her studies more than others. Particularly, teaching her the abacus seemed to help. She became good at mental arithmetic and math. Around the age of 10, she was even invited to a regional TV quiz show and advertised as a prodigy, which made Mary overly confident. As a result, not only my mother-in-law and Kevin but also relatives doted on her. "Mary definitely takes after Kevin. She's so smart." "Absolutely. Mary is our pride and joy. Maybe it was my teaching that did it. She could be a doctor or a lawyer in the future. Of course, I should be. I mean, it would be weird if I couldn't handle such simple problems." While I was pleased to see Mary's talents flourish to this extent, her arrogant attitude became increasingly apparent. "I know more words than you, so I'm amazing. Why can't you do this?" Mary compared herself to a 5-year-old relative and made the child's mother angry. I ended up apologizing them profusely. Trying to make Mary apologize was futile. She insisted she did nothing wrong, so she saw no need to apologize. "Mary, you can't look down on people. Even if you're good at your studies, it's meaningless if you don't understand how others feel. What's wrong with telling the truth? If you're upset, why don't you become a genius like me?" Mary would retort with such blatant defiance. That attitude started to be directed towards me as well, especially when I scolded Mary. The fact that my mother-in-law and Kevin always sided with her only worsened her behavior. Hey, I need money for some cosmetics. I can't give a grade schooler that much money. You just bought a $100 game the other day. So? You couldn't even do simple calculations at my age. I'm telling Grandma. She would retort dismissively. If I refused to give her money, my mother-in-law would complain, and ultimately, she would end up giving Mary the allowance. This is why Mary's discipline was going nowhere. With private middle school entrance exams on the horizon, she became even more conceited, making persuasion extremely difficult. Consulting Kevin was futile, he was too overjoyed to listen. If this continues, she'll become despised. She won't listen to me, so I want you to firmly tell her. You're just stupid, and that's why you don't get along. She truly is my child. Kevin was too caught up in Mary's potential future and fell deeper into gambling. Have you been to the gambling again? We're not wealthy enough to be splurging like this. I'm only spending within limits for fun, don't order me around. Plus, Mary will earn plenty in the future. Kevin was unreliable, and the ongoing disputes with Mary, along with my poor relationship with my mother-in-law, were mentally exhausting me. Mary's haughty demeanor towards her schoolmates led to troubles, prompting calls from her teacher. She prided herself on cornering others with her logic, leaving adults at a loss on how to deal with her. My memories of this period are patchy, likely due to the strain of my relationship with Mary. And then came the fateful day. On this day, Mary received her private middle school entrance exam results, passing with flying colors, and the house was filled with joy. However, as the mother-in-law planned to go out for a celebratory dinner, Mary uttered unbelievable words. "Don't come, old woman. You'll just ruin the fun." "What do you mean?" I asked, my mind going blank for a moment. Never did I imagine being referred to as old woman by my own daughter. "She doesn't want to eat with you." "Indeed, we don't need a nagging old woman around." "That's right. A cheeky woman like you isn't family." "That's exactly what it means. An old woman who only says mean things have no rights. And dressing up for nothing, how lame." Laughing scornfully, the three of them left for the restaurant I had reserved. Left alone in my best clothes, I crumbled at the entranceway. I had reached my limit. Being disregarded to this extent, I had no confidence in continuing to live like this. While they were out dining, I went to the municipal office to pick up a divorce form. I decided to leave the divorce paper in the living room and return to my parents' house. Later, I received an email from Kevin. "Hey, what's this about? Divorce, seriously? You got mad over that? I just can't keep up with you all anymore. You take care of Mary. To think you could have been the mom of a prodigy and you're wasting it. Fine, I'll give you the divorce. I don't care at all whether Mary is a prodigy or not. What mattered most to me was escaping that house as quickly as possible." Hoping to speak to Mary one last time, I asked Kevin to put her on the phone. "Divorce? Fine with me. If it means I don't have to hear you nagging anymore, then rather, it feels like I should say thank you." I had hoped for some words of remorse, but expecting that was foolish of me. Nothing I had taught Mary had resonated with her. "So, you're not needed. By then." The call was abruptly ended, and my over 10-year marriage ended just like that. My mother was surprised when I suddenly returned home, but after I explained everything, she had tears. "I can't forgive anyone who bullies my precious daughter. Forget about having a granddaughter, just stay here." She welcomed me back. For the first time in a long while, I felt cared for and cried all night. I had remarried, trying to forget that terrible marriage and started a new life. Just as my life had stabilized almost 6 years later, a call came through on my smartphone. I was at work and couldn't answer, so it went to voicemail. Thinking it might be work-related since there was no name, I played the message. But the voice that came through was unmistakably hers. "Hey, it's Mary. Why didn't you pick up right away? I nearly dropped the phone in shock. What could Mary possibly want after all this time? I'll forgive you for not picking up the phone, so I'll make it quick. Give me some money. Deposit $20,000 into the account I'm about to tell you. The message ended with those words and an account number. I stood there, mouth agape. To call out of the blue demanding such a large sum of money was outrageous. Besides, I should have no ties or obligations to my daughter anymore. I feared getting involved again might disturb my peaceful life. I decided to act as if I hadn't heard the message. Ignoring it seemed the best response, but Mary's demands for remittances only increased as days passed. The phone's been ringing, is something up? It's nothing, really. Henry, my current husband, looked curiously at the persistently ringing phone. A few days later, after a date at the aquarium with Henry, we decided to grab a meal at a nearby food court. As I was walking towards Henry with a sandwich meal, I was suddenly struck from the side. After hearing a dry sound, I felt a throbbing pain and realized I had been slapped as I saw the remnants of the sandwich scattered on the floor.
Jennifer, are you okay?
Henry, having witnessed the whole scene, rushed over to me in a panic. Looking to the side from where the blow had come, I saw the face of a grown-up Mary. She seemed to have gained a significant amount of weight, likely due to poor dietary habits. Given that Kevin and my mother-in-law constantly indulged her preferences, it was no surprise she had put on weight. Mary?
Why are you forming a new family when you already have a child like me? Go to hell and reflect on your actions. I'll never forgive you.
As I stood there in confusion, Mary continued to berate me. Why are you doing this, and am I not your family anymore?
But you were my mom, right? It's your fault you got divorced because of your affair. I've had to live with the stigma of coming from a broken home, so you owe me compensation.
Mary's irritation was evident as she stamped her feet increasingly louder.
Has the transfer not happened yet? Fulfill your motherly duties.
What? I'm not your mom though? Huh? At my declaration of not being her mother, Mary hesitated for a moment. Hearing Mary spout lies as if they were truths, it seems she hasn't yet been told the actual story. Mary might be a pitiful child, but she's at an age where she can be confronted with the truth. Given what I've been through, this would be a minor thing. I held back Henry, who was trying to support me, and faced Mary directly. What? You're still hung up on the past? You still have an obligation to pay child support, you know. That's where you're wrong. I'm not biologically related to you. What? Don't start with that nonsense just because you want to escape responsibility. It's your fault for cheating, isn't it? Me, cheat? That's absurd, but Kevin must have filled Mary's head with all sorts of lies. And despite the cruel words Mary had said to me over the phone during the divorce, she seemed to have conveniently forgotten all about that. Kevin must have told you things that suit him. The divorce wasn't because of any affair of mine. I was just fed up with you all.
Quit your excuses. I need money now, anyway.
Accepting such a ludicrous demand for $20,000 out of the blue was out of the question. Even if what you're saying is true, I can't just come up with a large sum of money all of a sudden. Why do you need it? Mary explained that she had successfully accepted by her choice of university but couldn't enroll because she couldn't afford the entrance fees and other expenses. So, she needed money for enrollment and other expenses after university admission.
Since then, Dad's been wasting money on gambling like water. You need to do something.
It seemed Kevin's gambling habit hadn't changed and had only gotten worse. Towards the end, he even started taking money from my wallet, making it clear how difficult it was to escape addiction. I sighed with a mix of relief and bitterness, thinking I really did well to leave.
What are you laughing at? I was called a prodigy, so hurry up and give me the money.
As I've been trying to tell you, I'm not your mom. Taking a moment, I then shared the truth with Mary. I had always loved children and dreamed of having my own, but reality was cruel. medical tests revealed I was unable to have children. After several tests and consultations at the gynecologist, the verdict was the same, and fertility treatments were not promising. My boyfriend at the time desperately wanted children, so we parted ways tearfully. It wasn't anyone's fault, and it was a mutual decision, but it left me devastated. I thought I would never be able to hold my own baby in my arms. That's when I met Kevin. He was shopping at the local supermarket, holding a baby, but he was clearly inexperienced. He was struggling with a crying baby while holding a bag containing eggs that had cracked and were making a mess inside the plastic bag. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but approach and speak to him. Kevin's previous wife had left him after having an affair, leaving him struggling with the care of newborn Mary. Having taken care of my younger sister before, I was more experienced with babies than Kevin. Actually, I thought that if it was left to Kevin alone, they wouldn't be able to have a proper lifestyle. I've always enjoyed being involved with children, so before I knew it, visiting Kevin's apartment to check on Mary had become a habit. Gradually, I developed affection for both Kevin and Mary, which led to Kevin and me dating and eventually getting married. The truth about Mary's biological mother running away after an affair was too harsh, so Kevin and I decided to raise Mary under the assumption that I was her biological mother. We knew the truth would come out eventually when getting a passport or other opportunities that may require birth certificate, but by then, we hoped Mary would be mature enough to understand. At first, my mother was bewildered, but my enthusiasm for raising a child got through to her. Accepting my decision, she said, "If that's what you think is best, Jennifer, then do it. I'll try my best to think of Mary as my granddaughter." But this is how it turned out. In the end, I made my mother cry, which made me feel utterly ashamed. Having failed with Mary, I was downcast, wondering if I couldn't properly raise even one child, when my mother introduced me to Henry. After my previous marriage, I had pretty much given up on the idea of marrying again. But Henry was also divorced. Henry, like me, had been sought after as the heir to a company in his previous marriage, entering the mother-in-law as a son-in-law, only to be significantly tormented by his in-laws. His spouse didn't defend him, and he was constantly belittled by his in-laws, unable to lead a decent life. Deciding he couldn't be treated less than human, he left his heir status behind and divorced. Henry and I met by chance when we both had returned to our hometown. Initially, I wasn't interested, but perhaps because we both carried similar scars, I found Henry's company comfortable. Maybe it was our compatible wavelengths, but being together felt natural, and we eventually remarried. So, since I'm now a stranger to you, I can't provide any allowance. We never underwent any adoption formalities, so I have neither a legal nor moral obligation to you. It seems you're having a hard time, but it's no longer my concern since we're divorced. What do you mean by that? I hadn't heard anything about this. It's no surprise Mary didn't know, given the divorce chaos happened before I could tell her the truth. Kevin probably painted me as the villain all along and couldn't bring himself to reveal the truth now. If you're struggling financially, why not ask those relatives who used to praise you as a prodigy? If you need an allowance, ask your grandma or someone.
That's not reliable at all. Neither grandma nor dad can be counted on.
From what Mary shared, after she entered a private middle and high school integrated school, she found herself surrounded by peers who were far more academically inclined. In her local area, Mary's grades were celebrated, but in middle and high school, she found herself towards the lower end of her class. Unable to boast to anyone, she ended up being reprimanded for her arrogant attitude instead. Her grades began to decline, and so did her father and grandmother's expectations. No longer the center of attention, Mary's frustrations grew, leading to a more twisted personality.
I won't forgive anyone who ridicules me. I'll get into a good university and show them all.
University is a place for learning, not for proving points to others. Do it for yourself. Plus, there are scholarship programs available. I wasn't wealthy when I went to college myself. I balanced work and study to make ends meet. Still, Mary grumbled on. Sensing something was off, I asked her directly. Hey, did you really get into university? Which one? If you show me the acceptance letter, I might consider it. Mary stammered out a few words, but then came clean, as if she thought she would get paid if she told the truth. She had been caught cheating during the university interview, leading to immediate disqualification. Mary was labeled a cheater. Because she had looked down on others, she ended up with no allies at all. She didn't send application to any other university, so there were no universities she could enter. Moreover, she hadn't engaged in job hunting, so she was also unable to start working with just a high school diploma.
It's absurd that cheating would mess up my life. Everyone's just jealous of a genius like me.
Interviews are supposed to be fair to everyone. Yet, it's only natural to face consequences for cheating in such crucial moments that could determine the course of one's life. Despite this, Mary had the audacity to remain unrepentant.
I thought you might have your reasons, so I listened quietly, but to have done something so outrageous. How could I possibly give you money for that reason? If you're out of money, then you need to work. I can't work with just a high school diploma. My pride won't allow it. It'll kill me not to get into a good university.
Such misplaced pride is better off gone. Seeing Mary throw a tantrum before me made me feel pity rather than anger. But I never wanted to revisit that hell again. Do you think you did nothing wrong? Remember how horribly you treated me? After being hated for 10 years, it's too late to seek a mother. I wanted to know if Mary felt any remorse knowing the truth. Had she shown a hint of apology, I might have considered caring for her a bit.
I don't remember such old stuff. I was smarter and just a child, so it's excusable. Don't lecture me when you abandoned your role as a mother over my cute rebellious phase.
Instead of apologizing, Mary shifted the blame to me. So quick to blame others. You're just like your dad and grandma.
Shut up. You abandoned your protective duty. Just give me the money without fussing.
I watched Mary, who was spewing such abusive language, with an icy stare. I couldn't help but notice her resemblance to Kevin. Spoiled and coddled like a princess by her grandmother and her father, Mary grew up to be hopelessly selfish and undisciplined. Her arrogance was now beyond correction. There was nothing I could do anymore.
Don't you pity me, lied to by my own father? My talents could have benefited this country.
Your talents need not bloom. You're irrelevant to my life. More importantly, your personality would be the real issue if you were to emerge into society. I delivered my words deliberately, biting each one. Hearing my words, Mary was speechless at first, but then reddening with rage, grabbed a nearby chair to swing at me. However, thanks to Henry's vigilance, he protected me, allowing me to dodge the chair. The chair struck another table, causing a loud noise that made the surrounding area buzz with commotion.
Stop it. You might have been Jennifer's daughter once, but now you're just a stranger causing harm. Damn you, spouting such nonsense. Who do you think you are, lecturing me like that? If you've been through what I've been through, you should painfully understand this anxiety. Yet, you forget that feeling and pompously lecture me. It's disgusting.
It's all your own doing, isn't it? Stop this shameful behavior once and for all. People are watching. Startled, Mary glanced around and realized that the commotion had drawn the attention of those nearby. Among them, there were students pointing their cameras at Mary, saying, "Whoa, check out the crazy woman."
It seemed she could no longer cause a scene, and Mary said, Yeah, you just love to belly the weak, don't you? Leaving a child in trouble to fawn over some other man. Women really are their own worst enemies. Remember this.
With those parting shots, she fled the scene. Whether a food court employee alerted them or not, police officers soon arrived, and I explained the situation. With a table damaged and people willing to provide video evidence, there was no lack of proof. When I got home, I told Henry about the financial assistance requests I had been receiving from Mary for a while. I hadn't wanted to trouble him with this, and I apologized for keeping it to myself. Henry placed his hand over mine and said, "I married you knowing about your past. From now on, please tell me everything. I may not be young, but I will protect you."
Thank you.
I was so grateful I couldn't stop my tears. Perhaps my failed first marriage was orchestrated by fate so I could meet Henry. I felt truly happy thinking this. Later, I received a message from Kevin. Apparently, Mary had caused a disturbance at the food court, and he was being demanded to compensate for the damages. "Why did you refuse Mary's requests? She was your daughter, wasn't she? You heartless woman. How dare you demand motherhood from me after treating me so horribly? That child and I aren't even blood related. But the bond can't be broken that easily. Not helping your own daughter is inhumane." Kevin hadn't changed at all. In fact, he had been fired from his company for dipping into its funds to cover his gambling debts. Hounded by debt collectors and working tirelessly, he couldn't escape poverty.
"It's all your fault for abandoning us. Take responsibility for our lives. Even Mom is angry at you."
"There's no way I can do that. It seems like you even lied to set me up. We divorced because of my affair, right?" "No, that was just because I was sad you were gone." He probably used me as a scapegoat for Mary's frustrations by speaking ill of me. Hearing enough of his complaints, I sighed in frustration until Henry took the phone from me. "Listening to you, it's revolting how self-centered your arguments are. Jennifer was forced to raise a child that wasn't even hers, and you didn't even try to protect her from mistreatment by your family. She's saying she doesn't want to deal with a man who wouldn't stand up for her."
"You've stolen Jennifer from me, right? So she was cheating after all. I should demand alimony from you both."
"This conversation is going nowhere. Your situation is entirely your own doing. Persist with this, and we'll consult a lawyer or the police." With a firm tone, Henry ended the call. After that, Kevin and his family's calls and messages came non-stop, but they ceased immediately after a lawyer got involved. "Please, I'm begging you, loan sharks are making my life miserable. If you have any compassion, lend me some money. I don't need a poor family like this. Telling me to work, unbelievable. Hey, Mom, can I come live with you?
Your neglect has made our lives miserable. I can't just go out and work now, send money."
The content of the messages portrayed a dire situation for Mary and Kevin. Later, my mother told me that Mary had also shown up at my parents' house. Trying to elicit sympathy, Mary acted pitifully sweet. "Hey, Grandma, I'm really suffering. I have no money, no food. Can I live here for a bit?" My mother was furious at her audacity. "After barely showing your face and now calling me Grandma, I find it disgusting. You've tormented my daughter to the bone, and now you dare come here." My mother vehemently turned Mary away. Mary ended up working, but her lack of social norms meant she was often reprimanded and quit repeatedly. The pride she had from being pampered and adored could not withstand the reality of work. Moreover, the internet's viciousness spread videos of her rampage, making finding employment even harder. Mary's life is set to be a difficult one. It might seem cold, but as an outsider, there's nothing I can do, nor do I want to help anymore. My life with Henry is what matters most to me. Jennifer, let's go on a picnic next time. I'll reserve a nice spot for us. Really? I'm looking forward to it. I'll make a special lunch. Henry offers me coffee, inviting me to another weekend date. While not lavish, these small joys are what we cherish, living our lives in tranquility. This is my greatest happiness, I thought, as I sipped my coffee and sighed contentedly.
Enough of this.
What? You don't have the right to say that to me. My husband barged into my home office, wrecking the place regardless of whether I was working or not.
Why does it come to this?
Are you serious? His face was earnest. He criticized me for just playing around, even when I was working from home. And it wasn't just him. Talking to her is a waste of time. Yeah, you're right. I didn't know she was this useless. A bug would be more helpful, wouldn't it? Mom, that's insulting to the bug too. Sorry, I just couldn't hold back. Every day was a struggle to endure such treatment. My opinions were ignored, and they freely vented their frustrations on me. Then, one day, while I was in an important meeting at home, my husband unexpectedly entered the room. However, I didn't notice because I was wearing headphones. Get ready. You're unnecessary in this house. Just a parasite.
I'm in a meeting right now.
My mother-in-law, who came in later, started scolding me too. It was when I turned back to the computer to turn off the camera. The colleagues in the meeting screamed, "Run!" I turned around in shock. My husband was holding a bucket over his head and threw its contents at me. At that moment, I felt like everything was in slow motion for the first time in my life. Then I felt a burning heat all over my body.
Stop!
The bucket was filled with boiling water. Need to disinfect you more. It's still not enough. I thought I needed to get to the shower room to cool down. But I couldn't escape because my husband grabbed my arm. Where are you going? He pulled my arm and dragged me out of the room as if pulling me along. I was taken to the living room, where my mother-in-law continued to pour boiling water on me. How about that? Did we manage to disinfect her a bit? I wonder. It's a pretty big bug, after all. You, a freeloader, should get out of this house. I clenched my fists and stood up. I filled with anger to the point that I couldn't feel the heat from the boiling water. Of course, that's my plan. I retorted. You cannot survive out there. That's when I smirked.
What are you laughing at?
She must have lost her mind by now. I revealed my true self to them. You're saying you're the CEO of a company with an annual turnover of $400 million? Stop joking around. You must have really lost it. It's okay if you don't believe me. But you'll be the ones regretting it. I had been preparing for this day for a long time. I went back to my office room, got the divorce papers, and returned. Here, the divorce papers. This should do it, right? Are you serious? You were the ones who said it first. Ignoring their wailing, I left the house. A month later, my husband and his mother visited me. This was also part of my plan. I am Patricia Brown, and I've been working at the company I started with my friends during college. We were studying economics, but decided to do something fun and launched an e-commerce website. Handling various items, we were almost the same as some major companies. To avoid getting lost in the shuffle, we pushed a certain concept to the forefront. What's up, Linda? Linda was one of the original members. I had a great idea. What if we mainly handle products that seem like they wouldn't sell? What? I want to do something amazing. I've already got permission from the other members. Looking at the products Linda suggested, they indeed seemed like they wouldn't sell. But they were interesting due to good design or low price, and it felt like it might work. That could be interesting. Right? Want to give it a try? We'll give it a shot. At that time, we were doing it as a game until we graduated. So, some of the members already had jobs. However, our e-commerce website started to get a little attention online, and we were making a pretty decent profit. Especially since I didn't have a job, I decided to continue running it. Speaking of which, what's Linda gonna do? I'm gonna help you. I don't have anything else I want to do anyway. Then let's give it our all together. I have a favor to ask. I was surprised by the request. No way, I can't do that. Wouldn't you be better for that? Everyone else thinks so too. Behind my back again. Sorry. So, what do you think? I was hesitant, but it felt good to be relied on by everyone. All right. But in return, I'm gonna need you to work harder than ever as my right-hand woman. When I told my parents that I wasn't going to get a regular job and instead continue as a CEO, they didn't object and gave me their blessing. After that, our profits continued to rise steadily, and by the time I was 27, we went public. That's when I met Joshua. It happened at a store I often visited. Joshua was the owner, the business handed down through generations. It is so cute. Thank you for always coming. Please take your time looking around. Will do. I highly rated the cozy atmosphere of the store and the fact that it stocked not only American but also foreign products. I kept going there regularly. As I visited multiple times, we started to have various conversations. Originally, Joshua was an employee. But the store was at risk of closing down after his father passed away. Weren't you scared? Of course, I was scared. But I grew up here. Also, my mom has a bad back, and I was the only one left. I see. Though, to be honest, the sales have been tough. Then Joshua shared something that startled me. Also, it might bore you, but when I took over the store, I was almost tricked by someone I thought was a friend. Really? Yeah. He was the owner of a real estate company. If I had gone along with his plan, he would have taken the store from me. He laughed it off, but I could tell he had been through a lot. That's why I kinda feel a bit of disgust when I hear the title of CEO. I'm a CEO too, but maybe I shouldn't say that. By the way, what do you do, Patricia? I could say I'm an engineer? Wow, that's impressive. It wasn't a complete lie. When we were launching the site, I helped my friends so I had some knowledge too. There was no turning back. I continued to visit the store, hoping to contribute in any way by purchasing various products. It was about half a year after I started visiting the store regularly. One day, as usual, I went to the store, and Joshua invited me out. We had talked a lot before, so we had a good relationship. I couldn't say yes right away. It wasn't that I didn't want to. I knew Joshua was serious and cared a lot about his family. Is it a no? Seeing his slightly sad face, I said I would go. I didn't fully understand why I made that decision at the time. After several dates, Joshua confessed to me. That was when I truly realized I liked Joshua. 6 months later, he proposed, and we went to meet his family for a marriage introduction. I'm still nervous. Don't worry. My mom is really kind. I just hope they'll accept me. While we were talking about this, we arrived at his parents' house. Welcome. You must be Patricia, whom Joshua has been talking about. Yes. The conversation went smoothly from there. So, Patricia, what do you think about living together with me? Living together? I don't particularly mind. I guess that might happen eventually. That's good to hear. The smile on my mother-in-law's face during this time stayed in my mind for a while. I had no idea about the devilish aspect hidden behind her smile. It was just 1 week after we registered our marriage. By the way, what are we going to do about our house? That's already been decided. What? I hadn't heard anything about it. I don't remember to discuss this before. Let's go for now. Wait a minute. Joshua took me to his parents' house, where we had just visited. Is this where we're going to live? From today, you'll be living here. Remember what Mom said the other day? Oh. I thought to myself, how could I be so foolish? The question my mother-in-law asked wasn't about eventually, it was about now. I couldn't exactly say no. I endure the desire to enjoy a newlywed life, just the two of us. Having spoken to her only once, I optimistically thought it would be okay since my mother-in-law seemed kind. Looking forward to living with you. I look forward to it too. There's one thing I want you to remember, don't forget that you've become a wife in this house. Yes, I remember. The next day, my moving boxes arrived, and I was allowed to use an empty room as my office. The change started to appear a week later. Patricia, do you remember what I told you? That you've become a wife in this house. I remember that, but... Good, because you're going to start working from today. Then, my mother-in-law handed me a broom and a trash box. I'm sorry, but I have work.
What? This is more important than that.
Suddenly, I was scolded. And she watched me the entire time I started cleaning. Joshua was at the store and not at home. I had no choice but to follow my mother-in-law's orders. Have you never cleaned before, Patricia? I have.
Then move more quickly.
It was as if she had become a different person, giving orders. And it was just the beginning, she even started taking my money. My mother-in-law had been a housewife and wasn't working now. Remember, this is also part of a wife's duties. That can't be right. But I couldn't say that to her. I can understand about that. From then on, she did whatever she wanted. While I was out, she would eat the food from the fridge or order expensive steak and make me pay for it. Of course, I didn't get to eat any. I need to talk to you about something. Yeah, tell me anything. It's about your mom. In an instant, I could see Joshua's face cloud over. Did something happen with my mom? How should I put this? She's been really tough on me. I tried to put it mildly. I see. Can you tell me specifically what she's done? I explained everything that had happened so far. As I talked, he nodded along, so I hoped he would speak up on my behalf. But that night, during dinner with the three of us, Patricia, you tattled to Joshua, didn't you? I looked at Joshua. He continued eating, seemingly unfazed by me. You're causing unnecessary trouble. That's because... I silently begged Joshua to say something. Joshua put down his chopsticks and sighed softly. Just to clear things up, dealing with parents is also part of a wife's duties. He said, the complete opposite of what I expected. Joshua is right. You just need to do things for us. Your opinion isn't needed. That's too much. Respecting your parents is just basic decency. If you can't do that, what can you do? We were completely at an impasse. This wasn't the person I thought I married. After dinner, Joshua went back to his room. Left alone with my mother-in-law, I felt utterly powerless to resist. If this happens again, you'll be skipping meals. I chose not to answer. But that only seemed to make trouble bigger. Do you listen to me? While I was looking down, she splashed water on me. When I looked up, my mother-in-law was just smirking. As I stood up and tried to go back to my office, she stopped me. You still have cleanup to do. That's your job, isn't it? I bit my lip and went back to do the dishes. We're not monsters, you know. As long as you do what you're supposed to, that's all that matters.
What are you saying?
You're already acting like a monster. Do you have something you want to say? No, nothing. After finishing the chores, I headed to my office. It was the one place in the house where I could be alone without anyone bothering me. I started to think about the future. I didn't want to continue being used in this house. I thought about consulting my parents, but the memory of their smiles when I announced my marriage came back to me. I can't disappoint them. Especially since it hasn't even been half a year since I got married. Besides, if I do everything she asks me to do, there shouldn't be any complaints. I psyched myself up again. I could bring up divorce when the time was right. That was what I thought. That's the spirit I see in you today. I guess I had the wrong idea before. From now on, I'll work hard for this family. That's the right attitude. Once I started managing the household chores nearly perfectly, my mother-in-law, who had always been so critical, suddenly started treating me kindly, which made me unexpectedly happy. Eventually, we even started going out together. I should have been doing this from the start. After that, I was able to live peacefully, except for Joshua. It seemed Joshua didn't like that I was getting along well with his mother. I hadn't noticed before, but Joshua really loves his mother. Joshua started plotting to drive a wedge between me and his mother. Sorry, but I need you to help out at the store from tomorrow. Help out at the store? But I have my work at home too. It's not like it's anything significant. You can bring your laptop along, can't you? What will you be doing during that time? What? You know I'll be taking a day off. I couldn't help but sigh. You'll do it, right? To be honest, I liked the store. Thinking positively, if I could work in that atmosphere, it might not be so bad. Okay, but not every day. All right. We're closed on Thursdays, so I'm counting on you from Monday to Wednesday. I agreed and started working at the store. But customers were scarce. There were days when not a single person came in from morning to evening. That's when I decided to try selling online through a web shop. I also used social media. Gradually, sales began to increase. It seems like sales have been going up lately. Yes, they have. So, my sense of style must be good. Maybe so. Most of the items in the store were sourced by Joshua. I admit that his taste in sourcing the products was a factor. However, that alone doesn't make products sell. In fact, it wouldn't be wrong to say it sold well because of the adjustments I made. I deliberately kept that fact hidden. Because I thought he wouldn't admit it anyway. Then, Joshua, misunderstanding the situation, started to get carried away. What's this about? Oh, this? I always wanted it, so I bought it. Cool, right? Joshua had bought a luxury car without discussing it with me, using most of our earnings. Without discussing it first? While we were arguing, my mother-in-law, who had just returned from shopping, caught us. What are you two doing here? Joshua bought a car on his own, using almost all of our earnings. Since my relationship with my mother-in-law was good at the time, she took my side without hesitation.
What are you thinking? We don't need something like this.
Joshua ended up getting scolded by his mother. Apparently, he couldn't stand up to her and just made excuses.
Don't say unnecessary things.
Hiding it won't change anything. It's just a matter of sooner or later. Damn it. Honestly, with my income included, money wasn't a worry, but continuing like this would definitely lead to ruin. It was one thing for Joshua, but I wanted to avoid affecting my mother-in-law. So, I figured if there was no money to be used, it would solve the problem, and I began reducing the inventory of our online shop. The strategy worked. Since I had been managing the sales and inventory since being asked to help at the store, Joshua could only know the financial situation through the sales reports I provided. So, how are sales this month? It seemed Joshua hadn't learned his lesson. This much for this month. That's it? Isn't that a bit low? That's the tough part of doing business, isn't it? Well, I guess so. After adjusting the sales for a few months, Joshua came up with an outrageous accusation. It happened one night. You're skimming the store's earnings, aren't you? What? I'm not doing anything like that. It's strange that the monthly earnings suddenly dropped. You must be embezzling. Do you have any proof? It started when you were managing the store. That's when the sales began to drop. Just because the sales dropped doesn't mean I'm skimming money, right? Are you fighting again? This one has been skimming sales and keeping the money for herself. Patricia has. I haven't done anything like that. Neither of us backed down, and the argument continued for a while. The day ended with my mother-in-law's mediation, but 2 days later, things took an unexpected turn. So, it was you taking the store's money after all. This again? I told you, I didn't do it. Then what's this? Joshua was holding an envelope. Inside it seemed to be a large sum of money, easily a few $1,000s. This was found in your office. You were hiding it, but unfortunately for you, now everyone can see. See, Mom? With this much evidence, I have no choice but to believe it. Wait, please. I didn't do anything like that. Believe me. Stop embarrassing yourself. Just admit your wrongdoing. I've been framed. I couldn't believe he would go to such lengths. Looking at my mother-in-law, she seemed to fully believe Joshua. It's a shame. I thought we were finally getting along. I really didn't. That's enough. I felt everything we had built crumbling down at that moment. The hellish times were returning. Forbidden from going to the store, I was confined to the house, forced to do chores as if I were imprisoned. On top of the usual housework, I was also sent out to the convenience store in the middle of the night.
Hey! What's with this awful meal? Are you messing with me?
Even in situations where my mother-in-law would have intervened before, she now ignored everything. It's cruel to bully her like this. But she needs to understand her place, right? Patricia. Yes. Then my mother-in-law threw the food into the nearby trash can. What are you doing? I thought it tasted bad. So, make it again. Now? Of course. You committed theft. This isn't even punishment. Even if she makes it again, it might still taste bad. Why don't we go out to eat? That sounds good. So you take care of the rest. The two of them left to eat out. Left alone in the house, I realized living with these people was impossible. I quickly finished cleaning up and secluded myself in my room. I shut down the online shop that I had contributed to for sales. This would surely impact them later. After all, there were barely any sales even before I started managing the store. By the time they realized, I wouldn't be in this house anymore. I also cleverly used shopping time to acquire a divorce form. I planned to confront them at the perfect moment. It happened while I was working as usual. Joshua entered the room, searching for hidden money in shelves and drawers.
Stop it already!
What? You don't have the right to say that to me. Why does it have to be like this? Are you serious? Joshua was earnest. Since it was his own lie, he couldn't back down now. Even when I was working from home, he accused me of just playing around. And it wasn't just Joshua. Talking to her is a waste of time. Yeah, you're right.
I didn't know she was this useless. A bug would be more useful, wouldn't it?
Mom, that's insulting to the bug too. Sorry, I just couldn't hold back. Every day was a struggle to endure. My opinions were ignored, and they freely vented their frustrations on me. Then, one day, while I was in an important meeting at home, Joshua unexpectedly entered the room. However, I didn't notice because I was wearing headphones. Get ready.
You're unnecessary in this house. Just a parasite. I'm in a meeting right now.
My mother-in-law, who came in later, started scolding me too. It was when I turned back to the computer to turn off the camera. The colleagues in the meeting screamed, "Run!" I turned around in shock. Joshua was holding a bucket over his head and threw its contents at me. At that moment, I felt like everything was in slow motion for the first time in my life. Then I felt a burning heat all over my body.
Stop!
The bucket was filled with boiling water. We need to disinfect you more. It's still not enough. I thought it was bad. I tried to head to the shower room. However, Joshua grabbed my arm, making it impossible for me to escape. Where are you going? He pulled my arm, dragging me out of the room like he was pulling me along. I was taken to the living room, where my mother-in-law continued to pour boiling water on me. How about that? Did we manage to disinfect you a bit? It's a pretty big bug, after all.
You, a freeloader, should get out of this house.
I clenched my fists and stood up. I filled with anger to the point that I couldn't feel the heat from the boiling water. Of course, that's my plan. I retorted. You cannot survive without us. That's when I smirked. What are you laughing at? She must have lost her mind by now. I revealed my true self to them. You're saying you're the CEO of a company with an annual turnover of $400 million? Stop joking around. They must have really lost it. It's okay if you don't believe me. But you'll be the ones regretting it. I had been preparing for this day for a long time. I went back to my office room, got the divorce papers, and returned. Here, the divorce papers. This should do it, right? Are you serious? You were the ones who said it first. Ignoring their wailing, I left the house. My destination was my parents' home. Standing at the front door, I hesitated to open it. I didn't want to come back here like this. Then I heard a voice from behind. Turning around, there stood my mother. Patricia? What's wrong? Mom. Sensing something was off, my mother gently led me inside. How is it? Tasty, right? Yeah. Your coffee is always the best, Mom. So, what brings you here at this time? Well, you see. I explained everything to my mother. Even my usually calm mother was furious this time.
What? That's unbelievable.
But I've been preparing for this.
Really?
Yes. We waited for my father to come home and told him everything that had happened. My father was ready to confront them immediately, but I stopped him. Why stop me? My daughter has been mistreated.
Please calm down. They will come to us eventually.
What do you mean? Just wait and see. That night, I received a call from Linda. Are you okay? It was chaos after you left. Sorry, a lot happened after that too. Are you all right now? For now, yes. I'm back at my parents' house. About today. Sorry for interrupting the important meeting. Then I remembered something crucial. Linda. We always record the meetings for documentation, right? Yes, we recorded today's meeting as usual. Oh, are you thinking what I think you are? Did you realize too? Yes. Can you send that to me later?
Okay.
Unexpectedly, I obtained the strongest evidence. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a while. A month later, Joshua and his mother came to see me. Please, help us. I was waiting for you. What? You're out of money and in trouble, right? You're a CEO, right? We're still married. If this continues, we'll have to give up the store. That has nothing to do with me. About the divorce papers you gave me. Did you bring them filled out? Joshua took out a folded divorce form from his pocket. Could you give it to me quickly? It's meaningless. With that, he tore it up in front of me. The only thing meaningless here is you. Now you understand. Give up and come back. Let's live together again. Sleep talking should take place when you're sleeping. I had something up my sleeve that would plunge them further into hell. Just come back without any fuss. That's impossible. This should make things clear. I showed them the recorded video of the meeting. That clearly captured the moment I was doused with boiling water. Now do you understand? How did you get this? You'll never understand. What? This can serve as solid evidence of domestic violence, and I was actually planning to go to the police with it. Shall we go together? Joshua? What should we do? Wait a minute. I'm thinking. They looked like they were about to start arguing right there. Then, my father appeared. Patricia.
Dad.
I thought I'd come and say a word. After all, we need to properly thank those who bullied my daughter. Seeing my father, Joshua and his mother were visibly scared. Maybe we should just give up. We can't back down now. You'd better listen to your mother. What should we do with these two? My father was more than ready. It's a hassle. Maybe we should just call the police now. I took out my smartphone. Seeing this, the two of them fled the scene. But little did they know, there was no escaping this. How foolish. They have nowhere to run. It's just the beginning. If you had gotten involved, we'd be the ones calling the police. My father and I shared a laugh, looking at each other. Now, for the final touch. First, I headed to the police station with the evidence. Based on the video evidence, they would initiate an investigation. And not just that, I also went to a law firm to proceed with the divorce. Linda, thanks for last time. It really helped me out. I just did what anyone would. Patricia is an important friend and also the president of our company, after all. The latter reason is the real deal, isn't it? Who knows? After that, Joshua and I successfully finalized our divorce. While he wasn't arrested for domestic violence, he did end up having to pay a fine. Moreover, considering everything that happened since we got married, I decided to make them apologize me. To me, having Joshua fall into hell through his beloved money seemed most fitting. Later, I went to a certain place. It's been a while. Patricia. What are you doing here? You put this store up for sale, right? And it seems like you've also accumulated some debt. Where did you hear that? I had a lawyer investigate everything about Joshua. It turns out he had been borrowing money regularly to cover living expenses. And it seems his mother didn't know about this fact. This store is no longer yours. What do you mean? Forgot who I am? You can't be you. Exactly. This store is mine from today. I'll make good use of it. Now, why don't you hurry back to your mommy? No way. I'm sure she'll comfort you. Leaving Joshua collapsed on his knees, I walked away. Afterward, I renovated the purchase store and revived it as a new shop. Of course, the sales are doing well. We are still growing and have much more to achieve. What are you doing here? This place is off limits to strangers. My son and his wife, who had been living with me, were moving out to their newly built detached house. Their new home was completed, and today was the housewarming party for their friends. Thinking it would be nice, I decided to join in the celebration, but my son and his wife turned me away at the gate, and on top of that, said something outrageous. If you really want to enter so badly, pay an entrance fee of $1,000. I was dumbfounded by her horrible words. To call me a stranger, even though I'm technically their mother-in-law and had lived with them until recently. To ask for an entrance fee when I came for a housewarming gift. And to do so with a smirk, demanding such an outrageous amount. As I mulled over what she had said, a boiling anger began to surge within me. Looking back, she had always been an incredibly rude person since we lived together. Looking down on me, hurling insults, treating me like a servant, pushing chores and the care of their children onto me. Especially with the grandchildren, she would frequently leave them with me to go out and have fun. My son was completely on her side, making it hard to believe we used to have a good relationship before he got married. Enough was enough. I was at my breaking point. I was determined to give them a thorough lesson. With a poker face, I looked at them and said, "All right, then I'll be leaving." Seeing that they had succeeded in driving me away, my son and his wife burst into triumphant laughter. Turning my back on them and their new home, I headed straight to a certain place. 3 days later. Hey! What the heck is this all about? The reason my son and his wife came rushing into our house, pale as ghosts, was quite the story. My name is Talia. Ever since our only son, Harry, got a job and left home, it's just been my husband and me in this big house. Even though I call him my son, Harry, and I don't share any blood relation. He's the child of my husband and his previous wife. But blood relation or not, I've always loved Harry as my own, and he's always treated me like his real mom. After Harry moved out on his own, I felt a bit lonely, but there was also a sense of relief from being freed from child rearing, and I've been enjoying my days working and spending time with my husband. Both my husband and I work for a company owned by my brother-in-law. It's a small family-run business where most of the managerial positions are held by relatives. Since we're both working and hold managerial positions, I believe we're able to live a relatively affluent life. We were living these ordinary, happy days, never expecting what life was about to throw at us. Life is unpredictable, after all. 3 years after starting his job, Harry married a woman who also worked at the same company. She was stunningly beautiful with a great figure, the kind of woman 10 out of 10 people would call gorgeous. Seeing them smile at each other during their first meeting and their wedding, I felt very reassured. Some time after their marriage, I received the news that Harry's wife was pregnant.
Oh, congratulations! When is the baby due?
Thanks. The due date is still quite a way off. Why do you sound so gloomy? I was excited to hear the news about my first grandchild and offered my congratulations, but Harry's voice was heavy with concern. Was there already a problem? When I asked, worried, Harry started to speak in a feeble voice, actually. According to Harry, his wife takes great pride in her appearance. Since getting pregnant, she's been struggling with her belly getting bigger and her body changing, becoming increasingly hysterical. Every night she steps on the scale, looks downhearted, and screams when she looks in the mirror. Harry tries to comfort her by saying, "It's just a sign that the baby is growing well. It's not because you're getting fat, but it seems to have the opposite effect on her." It seems that my son's wife was growing increasingly frustrated, feeling that my son wasn't understanding her struggles, interpreting him as an unsupportive husband. She was berating him almost daily, and it sounded like he couldn't take it anymore. "I can't support her on my own, please help me," he pleaded with tears in his voice, asking if they could move in with us. Honestly, I didn't think moving in with us would distract her from her feelings, and given that we're both working during the day, I didn't see how we could offer much support. However, sympathizing with my son, who felt he'd collapse if he had to continue living alone with his wife, my husband and I discussed it and decided to welcome them into our home. After my son and his wife moved in, my impression of her only worsened. It started from her very first comment on moving day, which was a mockery of our home. "What's with this house, it's so old and dingy. Plus, it's cold. Oh, I wish we stayed in our apartment even if it was smaller." Our home is a traditional Victorian-style house that's been in my husband's family since his grandfather's time. It's charming in its way, but admittedly old in many respects. It's prone to drafts, so her complaints weren't unfounded. However, as someone about to live with us, it seemed utterly disrespectful to openly criticize our home in front of us, the homeowners and her in-laws. But her bad behavior didn't stop at mocking our home. "Hey, old woman, can you make dinner quickly? And make sure you clean up properly. It's unbelievable how dusty it gets inside. What if something happens to the baby because of it?" My son's wife began treating me like a servant and throwing derogatory comments my way. I reprimanded her once for such behavior, but she retorted, "I'm pregnant. What if I miscarry because of the stress?" and refused to change her impolite attitude. Despite doubting that such things would cause a miscarriage, I was aware that pregnant women are delicate and shouldn't be stressed. I hoped that once the baby was born, her attitude would improve. Perhaps she was just irritable because things weren't going her way during pregnancy. Her hormonal balance must be off, and she must be having a hard time. With this in mind, I had no choice but to remain silent and choose to endure her brutality. A few months after they moved in, my son's wife gave birth to a healthy baby. My husband and I were overjoyed at the arrival of our much-awaited first grandchild. Exhausted from the birth, the usually noisy daughter-in-law was quiet for a while, allowing us to enjoy a brief period of peace. However, about a month after the birth of the grandchild, our household became even more miserable than before the delivery. First off, not long after the birth of my grandson, my husband was killed in a car accident. I was left in shock by the sudden loss of my husband. While drowning in deep sorrow, I managed the funeral and returned home. In the living room, my son's wife, who had claimed she couldn't handle the stress of the funeral because she was postpartum, was sitting heavily on the sofa my husband always used. She noticed my return and hurled insults. "Now that he's gone, the house feels so much bigger." Oh, what a relief. I couldn't believe the words she snorted through her nose and doubted my ears. But she continued to speak ill of my late husband, making it clear that her disrespect was heartfelt. True, my husband was a workaholic, but I respected and loved him for his dedication. To have my son's wife, who barely knew him and always complained, mock him was infuriating. As I was about to retort, my son said something unbelievable. Yeah, really. He was never home but always had something to nag about when he was. It was so annoying. My son who took advantage of his wife and started belittling her husband. I had hoped he would reprimand her, but instead, he said the exact opposite. Speechless at their audacity, they seemed satisfied with their venting and retreated to their bedroom. After that, my son's attitude changed. Until now, no matter how much his wife belittled or mistreated me, he would not chide her and remained a bystander. But after my husband's death, he began to agree with her entirely, berating and ordering me around. My son, who never had a major rebellious phase and always had a good relationship with me as his stepmother, had suddenly turned so cruel. Could this be the influence of his wife? However, it seemed I was the only one who felt his attitude had shifted so drastically. Apparently, the reason my son's wife acted so condescendingly towards me was that my son told her I was not his real mother. I know. You're not Harry's real mom, right? I heard he could never really see you as his mom. Plus, you were always so annoying, trying to mother him all the time. I heard he's been wanting to move out for ages but just put up with it for his dad's sake. When she told me that, I felt as if the ground had crumbled beneath my feet. I couldn't believe my son felt that way about me. As she sneered and said, "So, I really have no reason to respect you, do I?" Before walking away, I watched her back in stunned silence. Moreover, my son and his wife's behavior began to escalate. They didn't just hurl insults at me anymore, but started dumping their child on me to go out and enjoy themselves. Completely disregarding my schedule, they would go out day or night with friends, indulging in shopping sprees or parties. At times, they even took overnight trips for the weekend, leaving their infant child with me. What were they thinking, leaving a baby to gallivant around? Despite my protests every time they pushed their child on me, they wouldn't listen. Worse, they would say things like, "You should be grateful to spend time with your adorable grandchild." And the worst part was them leaving their crying baby with me at night.
Hey, I was sleeping so well, and you woke me up. Make it stop crying, will you?
It's unbearable being woken up every night like this. Make sure the baby doesn't cry at night, okay? It's natural for babies to cry at night. No matter how well you take care of them during the day, babies will cry. To demand that I, and not they, should solve this is absurd. Do they lack parental awareness? Though I'm filled with resentment, if I refuse to take care of my grandchild, they'd probably just neglect him. Unable to abandon my dear grandchild, I found myself stuck with taking care of him as they demanded. As time passed, years went by. My grandson grew up healthy and gradually became less of a handful, truly in his most adorable phase. Yet, my son and his wife continued to leave him with me while they went out. One day, when this had become the norm, my daughter-in-law suddenly made an outrageous demand. "I'm sick of this old, crumbling house, I can't stand it anymore." Since the beginning of our living together, she had always complained about our old Victorian-style house. Whether she had finally reached her limit or because leaving the grandchild with me no longer felt like a burden, she started throwing tantrums about wanting to move to a brand new house. To my dismay, my son joined in, saying, "Actually, I've always hated living in this old-fashioned house," and expressed a desire to move. Despite their complaints, I thought they wouldn't actually move. I lived shutting out their constant grumbling. But a few months later, my son and his wife really did purchase prime real estate in the city center and built a new house to move into. Finally, we can say goodbye to that rundown house. Though I had my reservations, I also breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I was finally free from them. On the day their new house was completed, I visited to see their new place as a form of celebration. There, I found many people, including my daughter-in-law's friends and her parents, visiting. Surrounded by a crowd, my son and his wife were proudly showing off their new home. They seem busy, so I'll just take a quick look around and then leave, I thought as I approached them. However, they rejected me with a look of disdain.
"What are you doing here? This place is off limits to strangers."
I was taken aback by being called a stranger and denied entry. Right after that, as if she had thought of something amusing, she smirked and said, "If you really want to come in, then pay an entrance fee of $1,000. I was shocked by such an outrageous demand. To call me a stranger, even though I'm technically their mother-in-law and we lived together until recently. To ask for an entrance fee just to visit for a housewarming. And to do so with a smirk, demanding such an exorbitant amount." As I processed what she had said, a boiling anger began to surge within me. Reflecting on our time living together, she had always been incredibly rude. Looking down on me, hurling insults, treating me like a servant, pushing chores and the care of their child onto me. Especially regarding their child, she would frequently leave him with me to go out and have fun. My son was completely on her side, making it hard to believe we used to have a good parent-child relationship before he got married. It might be unavoidable that he can't think of me as his mother, but I've always considered him my true son and believed I raised him with love. Yet, the moment my husband died, they stopped pretending and began to mock me. Doesn't he feel any gratitude for how he was raised? I was seething with anger, feeling as though my kindness had been repaid with betrayal. I've reached my breaking point. I'm going to get back at them thoroughly. With that determination in my heart, I looked at them expressionlessly and said, "All right, then I'll be going." "What, you're leaving without even coming in after making the trip here?" "Well, don't bother coming back again," they said, laughing loudly as they sent me away. Turning my back on them and their new house, I went home and then straight to the bank. 3 days later.
Hey! What in the world is this about?
My son and his wife, looking pale as ghosts, came storming into my house. They barged in with such force it was as if they were about to break the door, but I dealt with them outside, not letting them in. "Keep it down. You're disturbing the neighbors."
The bank account is empty. What's this all about?
I scolded, not bothering to hide my annoyance, but my daughter-in-law snapped back as if she couldn't care less about my attitude. "The bank account is empty." Knowing exactly what she was referring to, I suppressed the urge to laugh and coolly replied, "Oh, the bank account. I've moved all the money to another bank account. From now on, you'll be paying for your own living expenses and mortgage. And of course, that includes clothes and drinks." Wah! My son and his wife were speechless at my response. In fact, ever since they began living with us, they had been using my bank account for all their expenses. Not just for living costs like food and child-rearing expenses for my grandson, but also the lavish spending on clothes and luxury goods, and even the down payment and land purchase for their new house, were all paid from my account. Looking back, I wish I hadn't spoiled him so much, but ever since I remarried his father, I've always felt sympathy for my son. Losing his biological mother at a young age and then his father right after his own child was born, I wanted to support him as a mother, even if we weren't related by blood. In fact, I felt I had to. That's why I endured all the verbal abuse and mistreatment, thinking doing whatever I could for him was my way of showing love. But this incident with their new house was the last straw. If my son had become such a foolish person, I thought I might as well give up on him. Perhaps my husband had foreseen a day like this would come. He used to say, "If anything happens to me, cut ties with my son and his wife." When I first heard this, having no bad feelings towards them, I was shocked and asked why he would say something like that. He then shared his feelings that our son was foolish in many ways and that the woman he chose as his wife was trouble. He spoke with specific examples, but at the time, I couldn't believe they would act in such a way and wondered if my husband was just imagining things. Still, the fact that my usually reserved husband spoke so strongly left an impression on me, and his words lingered in my mind after he passed away. Every time I was mistreated by my son and his wife, I would pray at my husband's altar for advice. And this time, I declared, I think it's time to let go of my son, before heading to the bank. Maybe being cut off from the bank account and losing access to the money they freely used hit them hard. They stood dumbfounded, their faces ashen.
"Is that all you have to say?
Then please leave."
Wait!
My son tried to stop me as I entered the house, reaching for the door. I slapped his hand away and faced them. Sorry, but this house is off limits to strangers. If you're willing to pay an entrance fee of $1,000, I might consider letting you in. Wha? Repeating the words my daughter-in-law had said to me back to them, they were petrified. They were outraged but ended up leaving without a word. I thought I was finally freed from this trouble, but it wasn't that easy. The next day, my son and his wife showed up at my house again. Morning, Mom. Sorry about yesterday. Seems like we both got a bit carried away. Are you mad? Oh, Mother, you look tired. May I give you a shoulder massage? Their tone had completely changed from the day before, as if they were now trying to gauge my mood. My daughter-in-law, who had never called me mother before, started doing so while trying to be sweet with body contact. Their behavior, clearly trying to butter me up, was disheartening. Instead of properly apologizing for their past actions, they tried to superficially make amends and win me over, which was nothing short of shallow. They probably didn't believe I would truly cut them off. Fed up and not wanting to say anything, I was repulsed by how sickeningly sweet they were trying to be and bluntly rejected them. Buttering me up now won't change anything. I won't give you a penny anymore. Please leave. Realizing their strategy wasn't working, they instantly dropped their facade and began yelling in anger.
After we went out of our way to humble ourselves, you get all high and mighty. You dare talk back like that, you old hag. Just give us the money.
Their true colors showed as they hurled unbearable insults at me. Their behavior lacked any decency, and all I could see was their appalling nature. Considering stopping this before it became a real nuisance to the neighborhood, my daughter-in-law yelled, "Hey, don't ignore us," and, in a fit of rage, threw a potted plant on the ground beside the entrance. It shattered with a loud noise. After a moment of silence, my son screamed again.
Just drop dead, you old witch. Then all your money will be mine.
His wife nodded in agreement with his words. Shocked by their actions and my son's words, I paused for a moment. My son thinks he will inherit everything from me. After realizing what he said, I burst into laughter. They seem to be under a big misunderstanding. What are you talking about? You have no inheritance rights. Huh? Don't spout nonsense. My son and his wife did not want to believe me at all, but when I explained the facts to them, their faces gradually changed. In fact, I never legally adopted my son. Legally speaking, my son is just my husband's child from another marriage, and he has no right to my estate. For him to inherit anything from me, either adoption or a will written by me would be necessary, and of course, I have no intention of writing such a will. The only other option would be adoption, but I've already filed a non-acceptance declaration to ensure he can't adopt me without my consent. This means, unless I change my mind, it's impossible for my son to inherit anything from me. So, even if I pass away, you two won't get a dime from me. Now, if you understand, please leave. But my son and his wife, who clearly had been counting on my inheritance, were shocked by this revelation, lost for words and stunned. Even when prompted to leave, they didn't budge. Fed up, I casually picked up my smartphone and made a call. Hello, is this the police? My flower pot at home was broken. Yes, the perpetrator is still right in front of me. Could you come quickly to catch them?
What? The police?
I had called the local police station. I reported the incident of my daughter-in-law breaking the flower pot as property damage. Realizing I had called the police, they were terrified and fled from my house before the police arrived. Watching them hastily leave, I felt relieved, thinking I had finally resolved the problem that had been troubling me for years. By the way, after the flower pot was broken, I chose not to press charges since I wasn't injured, allowing the matter to be resolved without further action. I just wanted to get rid of my son and his wife without making a big fuss, thinking it could lead to more trouble or resentment if I did. I decided not to press charges over the broken flower pot since I wasn't injured, and it wasn't very expensive. Later, I heard through the grapevine that my son and his wife continued to live lavishly and were on the brink of ruining themselves financially. Despite not having access to my account, my daughter-in-law, assuming there was money in my son's account, didn't stop her extravagant spending and used credit cards. Her calculation was way off. There wasn't enough money in my son's account to cover her spending. As a result, my son was overwhelmed by the mortgage for their new home and his wife's spending, piling up debt after debt. The debt ballooned to an amount far beyond repayment, and in desperation, my son resorted to embezzling company funds. This was quickly discovered, and he was fired as a result. Burdened with debt and now jobless, his wife demanded a divorce, seeing no use in him any longer. However, my son refused to consent to the divorce, and their argument escalated into a legal battle. Shockingly, during the court proceedings, it was revealed that my grandson was not my son's child, indicating that his wife had been unfaithful. This added issues of alimony payments to the messy divorce, further complicating the situation. The two are still embroiled in a bitter court battle, hurling insults at each other. Meanwhile, I've finally been freed from the headache that was my son's family's problems and have been able to devote myself more passionately to my work. As a result, our company's sales have multiplied, bringing joy to my employees and raising my personal reputation. While there's no promotion or raise left for me to achieve, which I wasn't particularly interested in anyway, I feel more motivated to work hard for the sake of my employees who look up to me. Now alone in the spacious house that once held my family, I live here immersed in memories of my late husband. Every day, I smile and talk to his photo, spending my days in peace.